Hidden Shadow Snake Hands. This jutsu is basically a snake summoning move, but instead of doing the classic bite your hand and slam the ground summoning, Orochimaru just pulls creatures straight out of his own body. The snakes summoned from his sleeves can stretch dozens of meters, move ridiculously fast, and, most importantly, follow the summoner's will completely. The coolest part is how flexible this jutsu is. The snakes don't just bite or strangle, they can also act like grappling hooks, letting the user swing around or move instantly in battle. That versatility makes it absolutely busted in close combat. Both Orochimaru and Anko usually summon snakes from their sleeves, but the anime shows us an even crazier variation. Orochimaru turning his tongue into a snake to pull off the technique. It shows off his freaky level of body control. And then we got Sasuke. He can summon snakes straight out of his bare shoulders. That's pure evolution of the technique, showing how adaptable and straight up lethal it can be in any fight. Snake spying technique. This is straight up one of the smartest and most dangerous intel jutsu out there. Basically, the user makes a direct neural link with a summoned snake, which lets them literally see and hear everything the snake experiences. Snakes are naturally hypersensitive creatures with crazy sharp senses, and the ones summoned for this jutsu are usually pretty small. That makes them perfect for slipping into tight spots where no human could ever fit, eavesdropping on secret conversations, and spying on hidden strategic plans. It's no wonder Orochimaru always had ridiculous amounts of information. With this technique, he could absolutely gather intel in ways nobody else could touch. Clone snakes, serpent technique. This is honestly one of the wildest and most unique jutsu Kabuto ever cooked up. Kabuto slams his hands down on a water surface filled with special snakes he modified, and then he shoots out these dark red lightning bolts. That electric charge triggers the transformation, fusing all the little snakes into one gigantic green serpent with a glowing red mouth. And yeah, it's completely eyeless, which makes it even more terrifying. The scariest part of this jutsu is its straight-up cruel purpose. The giant snake doesn't just kill the enemy instantly. Instead, it shoves them underwater and holds them down, making them drown. That's basically a slow execution, and it's absolutely brutal. Kabuto usually uses this technique inside the hole, a special space that massively speeds up his snake regeneration. That means he can constantly spawn fresh snakes to keep the attack going non-stop. But this technique really needs a water environment to hit its full potential. Snake clone technique. This is a super smart evolution of the classic shadow clone jutsu. Instead of just using pure chakra to create copies, this technique uses snakes as the catalyst, a completely different and insanely creative approach. With it, the user can not only make clones of themselves, but even clone other objects, opening up a ridiculous amount of tactical possibilities that the normal shadow clone could never pull off. The real brilliance of this jutsu is in its adaptability. When a snake clone takes enough damage, it doesn't just poof away like a regular shadow clone, it breaks apart into a swarm of snakes. And those snakes can still keep moving independently, slipping into tight spaces or hard-to-reach areas the actual user could never get into. On top of that, the caster can still control their actions from a distance. This is literally the perfect combo of deception and reconnaissance, totally busted for sneaky, high-level ninja play. Snake reconnection technique. This technique is the ultimate proof that Orochimaru has completely surpassed the limits of a human body and turned into something entirely different. When Orochimaru's body gets cut clean in half by an enemy, instead of dying like any other ninja, swarms of snakes crawl out from both halves and literally pull him back together. The process looks like time itself is rewinding, fully restoring every single injury he just took. You gotta understand, this isn't just some regular healing trick. What it actually means is that Orochimaru has replaced his entire biology with snakes. His body is literally a colony of snakes, reorganized to look like a human form. That's why he can survive totally lethal damage that would instantly kill anyone else. But there's also a downside. Because his body is basically a snake colony, it's kinda fragile in its own weird way, and that's part of the reason why Orochimaru could never master Sage Mode. Binding Snake Glare Spell. This jutsu is basically the perfect move for capturing and restraining enemies alive. The user summons one or two gigantic snakes straight out of their sleeves, and these beasts instantly slither out to wrap tightly around the target, locking them down completely. Now you can use it to capture an opponent alive for interrogation, crush them with a deadly constriction, or, if things get really nasty, let the snakes bite with fangs packed full of lethal poison. That adaptability makes it absolutely terrifying in any situation. The way it's executed is also ridiculously clever. By using blood on a preset contract seal, the user can cut down the summoning time and activate the technique almost instantly. 8 Branches Technique. This is straight up the ultimate form of Orochimaru. Yeah, he can transform into a gigantic white serpent with 8 heads and 8 tails. When it comes to size and raw power, this monster is even bigger than Manda. Just by sliding on its belly scales, it can literally trample the entire Uchiha hideout and destroy almost everything in its path without any difficulty. The most brilliant part of this technique is the tactical flexibility. Orochimaru can emerge from the mouth of one of the heads and swing the sword of Kusanagi to launch surprise attacks, all while maintaining the absolutely massive destructive power of his giant form. With power on this level, this is totally a battle-changing jutsu. The only problem? Orochimaru used it against another god-tier force in the same weight class, Itachi's Susanoo, wielding 2 legendary spiritual weapons. Against that kind of divine defense, even an S-rank technique like this couldn't really do much. Formation of 10,000 snakes. This jutsu is pure nightmare fuel for anyone unlucky enough to face Orochimaru. The concept is terrifyingly simple, but ridiculously effective. Overwhelming numbers. Thousands of snakes pour straight out of Orochimaru's mouth and absolutely swarm the target, hunting them down with crushing force. When you see this technique in action, you instantly get why it's called the Wall of Snakes. It's literally a living wall made of serpents. Defense and evasion become completely meaningless because there's nowhere to hide and nowhere to run. The enemy just gets buried alive under a sea of snakes. Every single snake is deadly in its own way. They can bite with venomous fangs, or even open their mouths to extend blades similar to the Kusanagi sword. Many Hidden Shadow Snake Hands. This move is the next level evolution of the classic Hidden Shadow Snake Hands we already know. But this version is about turning those snakes into a coordinated army. Instead of a few snakes popping out for some simple strikes, now you got a whole squad of big snakes showing up instantly, and each one's got its own specific mission. Some snakes go hard on intimidation, throwing crazy psychological pressure. Others are straight-up distractions, pulling the enemy's focus away. And the rest? They're the ones that swoop in to lock down the target. The enemy simply can't keep track of every threat at once. They might dodge the snake coming at their face, but then another one's already sliding in from their blind spot, ready to catch them slipping. Slithering Snake Mode. This technique is basically Orochimaru's cheat code for maxed out movement and insane mobility. The user transforms the lower half of their body into a full-on snake tail, and that gives them a tremendous boost in speed and agility. Instead of being stuck moving on 2 boring human legs, now they're slithering with that smooth, fluid motion of a real snake. But Orochimaru being Orochimaru, he's got an alternative version that's even crazier. Instead of a simple morph, he literally sheds his entire skin, yeah, like a snake, for a brand new body that already comes pre-built with a snake tail. That just screams how ridiculously prepared and body-modified this dude is. Snake Mouth Bind. This is one of the scariest suicide moves in Orochimaru's whole arsenal. The concept is crazy dangerous. The user traps both their opponent and themselves inside the mouth of a massive snake. Now, you and your enemy are both locked inside a snake's stomach, and there's literally no way out. The most insane part of this jutsu is the elasticity of the snake's stomach. It's so ridiculously stretchy and durable, it can even withstand Gamabunta. Yeah, that giant toad the size of a skyscraper, being summoned inside. This technique is totally perfect for situations where you need to isolate and lock down an opponent. But it's also a massive weakness. The user has to be way stronger than whoever they're trapping, or have some kind of solid escape plan. Twin Snakes Mutual Death Technique. This is easily the forbidden jutsu Orochimaru ever passed down to Anko. The whole concept is absolutely brutal and desperate. The user has to grab their victim's hand and literally force them to help complete the hand seals. Once the sequence is done, both the user and the victim die together. It's described as a lover's double suicide. We've never actually seen it pulled off successfully. When Anko tried to use it against Orochimaru, she stabbed her own hand into his to keep him from escaping while doing the seals. But once she realized the target was only a shadow clone, the whole thing got aborted. This is the ultimate sacrifice move, a desperate last resort where the user is fully willing to give up their own life just to take down an insanely dangerous enemy. But here's the downside. This jutsu can totally fail if the target manages to break free from the binding, or if it turns out they're just a clone. So even though it's forbidden, it's honestly less reliable than some of the other mutual death type techniques out there. White snake possession. This is straight up one of the most disturbing and invasive jutsu Orochimaru ever cooked up. Orochimaru transfers his consciousness into a white snake, then literally slithers inside the target's body to gain complete control over both their body and mind. Imagine suddenly losing all control of yourself and being trapped inside your own head. That's the absolute horror victims have to endure. The concept is kinda similar to the Yamanaka clan's mind-body switch technique, but the execution is totally different and honestly way more terrifying. Instead of just a mental link, white snake possession uses physical infiltration through an actual snake. That makes it feel like a violation on a whole other level, because there's literally a foreign creature crawling inside your body. Orochimaru even flexed this technique when he took control of Kajika to test Sasuke's power, proving it's a perfect tool for manipulation and indirect fights. This jutsu is absolutely ideal when you want to control someone without putting yourself at direct risk in combat. Clone snakes. Serpent technique. This is honestly one of the wildest and most unique jutsu Kabuto ever cooked up. Kabuto slams his hands down on a water surface filled with special snakes he modified, and then he shoots out these dark red lightning bolts. That electric charge triggers the transformation, fusing all the little snakes into one gigantic green serpent with a glowing red mouth. And yeah, it's completely eyeless, which makes it even more terrifying. The scariest part of this jutsu is its straight-up cruel purpose. The giant snake doesn't just kill the enemy instantly. Instead, it shoves them underwater and holds them down, making them drown. That's basically a slow execution, and it's absolutely brutal. Kabuto usually uses this technique inside the hole, a special space that massively speeds up his snake regeneration. That means he can constantly spawn fresh snakes to keep the attack going non-stop. But this technique really needs a water environment to hit its full potential. Sage Art, White Rage Technique. This right here is a senjutsu technique that only those who trained at Ryuchi Cave and fully achieved Sage Mode can even hope to master. After forming the required hand seals, the user spits out this dragon-like entity from their mouth, and this beast is holding an orb in its left front claw. The real action starts when the dragon coils tightly around that orb. That motion instantly triggers a reaction that creates both blinding light and deafening sound by making the air oscillate with insanely high intensity. But that's not even the worst part. The vibrations generated also cause absolutely paralyzing pain for anyone caught in it. So yeah, this one jutsu is basically attacking on 3 fronts at once. Your eyes with the blinding flash, your ears with the overwhelming noise, and your nervous system with those brutal vibrations. Thanks to Snake Sage Mode, Kabuto's literally immune to his own move. He can close his corneas to block the harmful light while relying on his boosted other senses. On top of that, he can liquefy the inside of his body to negate the vibration effects from the sound. So while every enemy around him is completely incapacitated, Kabuto is still totally combat ready and in full control. Well, I'm throwing this jutsu on the list because Kabuto even said he had fully transformed into a dragon, though honestly, it looks more like a snake with legs. Either way, no matter how you frame it, this is absolutely one of the most insanely powerful techniques out there. Soft physique modification. This technique is where Orochimaru completely flipped the script on how the human body can function in both combat and espionage. Before you can even perform this move, the user has to go through a super painful and permanent body modification process that massively boosts the flexibility and elasticity of their entire body. Basically, it straight up rewrites your anatomy, letting you bend and stretch in literally any direction you want. The way it works is honestly wild from a biomechanical standpoint. The user can deliberately dislocate their joints in a controlled way, then use chakra to reshape and move their body however they want. That means the skeleton is no longer a limiting factor at all. At first, Orochimaru developed this mainly for intelligence gathering. The ability to squeeze into insanely tiny spaces that no normal human could reach was absolutely priceless for spy missions. But in combat, the applications are absolutely deadly. The user can wrap around opponents to restrain or crush them like a giant anaconda. Their limbs can stretch out to massive lengths, working like whips that can smack enemies from unexpected angles and ridiculous distances. The catch? Just like Luffy from One Piece, being ultra stretchy also makes you way more vulnerable to slashing or cutting attacks. Hidden Shadow, Wild Snake Hands. This is the upgraded version of the classic Hidden Shadow Snake Hands, but with a totally game-changing twist. Instead of just summoning snakes from your sleeves, this technique calls up a massive swarm of snakes that erupts straight out of the ground to absolutely ambush the target. This move is perfect for ambush plays and battlefield control. The user can literally herd enemies into specific zones and then trigger the underground snakes from predetermined spots, turning the terrain itself into a deadly trap. It's sneaky, it's brutal, and it gives you insane control over the fight. But yeah, it's not flawless. The major limitation is all about setup. The user needs actual prep time to position the snakes underground before the battle, and it doesn't really work on hard surfaces like concrete or solid rock. Lightning Release, Snake, Lightning. This jutsu is basically the ultimate mashup between elemental lightning ninjutsu and those creepy snake techniques. The user can generate a discharge of yellow electricity from their hand, but the real flex here is how insanely versatile it is. You've got 3 totally different ways to fry somebody, and each one is stupidly deadly. First method? If the user's underwater, they can just release the electricity all around their body. That instantly turns the whole water area into a giant freaking conductor, shocking any enemy dumb enough to be in the vicinity. Imagine scrapping in a pond, and suddenly the entire pond becomes a lethal weapon. Second method's way more direct. Just thrust that lightning straight into the target for raw, destructive damage. No gimmicks, just pure zap. But the third method? That's the one that's actually insane. Shaping the lightning into a freaking snake made of chakra and sending it out to attack from a distance. The lightning snake is absolutely genius because it combines the raw speed of lightning with the unpredictable, slithery movement of a snake. You can dodge a straight lightning bolt, sure, but this thing can literally curve and change direction mid-air. That's just unfair, man. This jutsu is totally versatile. It works for underwater fights, close-range brawls, or long-range sniping. The only real drawback is how much chakra it eats up, especially if you're maintaining that lightning snake form. And of course, it's not that great against enemies who can resist lightning. But with 3 different ways to apply it, the user's always got tactical options to adapt and absolutely dominate the fight. Summoning technique. This right here is the absolute pinnacle of snake-based ninjutsu. We're not talking about calling in some pet. This is a full-on blood contract with legendary creatures that can completely flip the outcome of a battle. And when we talk snakes, 3 names always pop up: Manda, Aota, and Garaga. Each one represents a totally different philosophy about power, loyalty, and survival. Manda is basically the embodiment of raw, destructive power. This monster is so massive, it can literally crush buildings just by crawling over them. Aota is the complete opposite. Instead of arrogance and chaos, Aota is all about absolute loyalty and tactical intelligence. No dramatic flexing like Manda, but its effectiveness in combat is absolutely undeniable. Plus, it's super flexible and ridiculously fast, basically the perfect partner in a fight. Garaga, though, is on a whole different level of complexity. After being betrayed by a past master, it's got major trust issues. But the bond it forms with Boruto shows rare character growth you almost never see in summoning creatures. Add in petrification abilities and venomous strikes, and Garaga becomes this unpredictable but insanely effective wildcard, especially when it's actually motivated. These three snakes are some of the biggest, baddest beasts in the entire shinobi world. They don't just show up for random scuffles, only the most epic, large-scale battles are worthy of their presence. Alright, that's it for today, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.